Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, Covent Garden. It's Wok Wednesdays again, or actually a Wokless Wednesday because we're making egg tarts Hong Kong style. Right, so the first part of egg tarts is really simple. You're going to make a syrup. You can use normal caster sugar. It's quite nice to use something a little bit less refined. There's palm sugar here. Sugar that comes out of the sap of a coconut palm tree. So I'm going for about 180 grams of palm sugar to 300 grams of water, and we're going to melt that through. If you were in Southeast Asia, well, you can get access to things like pandan leaves. That's a nice little addition too. It's kind of like the Southeast Asian version of vanilla. Palm sugar is great. It's got that nice sort of treacly, almost natural, well, like honey flavour. It's really, really good. Much better for you than caster sugar too. So, 180 grams. Oh, look at that. Bang on. To 300 grams of water. Just sort of push that through, and then you want to melt it. So, and we will chill this before we use it for the egg tart filling. This is classically in Hong Kong, an egg tart, not like a Portuguese egg tart. There should be no sort of caramelization on the top of the egg mix. Just give that a push through and melt it and get a nice syrupy texture. You do want to sort of reduce this by about half before you then chill it, ready for your filling. So you just bring that down to a medium heat, let it simmer, just so that it reduces but you don't lose too much of that water. So once your syrup's done, you should have a nice sort of dripping consistency. You want about 225 grams of your beautiful palm sugar syrup. You can see that great consistency there. That's pretty much all of it. And then I've just got a ice cold water here just to cool it down a bit quicker. You don't have to do this, but obviously if I want to make things quick enough, it'll just speed up the process a little. Next up, you want to beat your eggs. 4 eggs here. We will thin it out with a little bit of water. We're going to get a fair amount of air into the mix when I'm beating, but in a second I'm going to want to take those excess air bubbles out of this mix to make it as smooth as possible. So when you are whisking, don't sort of over whisk and get too much air in, otherwise it's quite a lot of hassle later on. So we want about 60 mils of water in here to get a slightly thinner consistency in the egg. This is so we get this sort of what the Chinese or Cantonese call wap feel in your mouth, a sort of super melt in the mouth feeling. With egg, you do sometimes get that sort of stringy bit of egg white. So I'm going to sieve this through a couple of times. With this egg mix, if you have got any air in it at all, once the sugar goes in, those bubbles will sort of bubble up and create this sort of caramelized bubble on top of the egg tarts. That's what we're trying to avoid by removing the bubbles. Clearly seems quite tedious in particular, but it does make a difference to that melt in the mouth finish. We'll do this whenever I see any bubbles in the mixture, just to grab those pockets of air out. So my syrup is now cooled nicely. Just get that into your egg mix, and that'll help to set the egg into the tarts whilst they're baking. Give that a good uniform colour, and you can see that immediately that's deepened the yellow colour of my egg mix. Now traditionally in the Chinese bakeries they probably use a little bit of food colouring in that filling. It's not necessary at all. Just use some nice ingredients like your palm sugar and you'll get a similar finish. Once you've mixed your syrup into the egg mix, if you have sort of beaten a bit more air into it, don't forget to dab it through. But I'm going to sieve the mix first, just to get any sort of stringy bits of egg out of that filling. Great colour. You can see those little bubbles of egg white that we're sieving out. Excess bubbles. Time to re-dab. Not sure if re-dab's a word, but hey, we just made one up. Right, so classically, a Cantonese egg tart, we use a puff pastry where the layers are made up of the dough and lard. The lard makes a really flaky pastry, obviously not very vegetarian friendly, but also making puff pastry at home is a real hassle, so there's nothing wrong with just buying a bit of puff pastry. I do like to roll it out a little thinner, just so that we don't go too heavy on the pastry and you have enough space for as much filling as possible. So we've got these are classic egg tart tins, but you can use any sort of muffin tin you like really. Just a round cutter. And puff pastry's got enough butter in it. You shouldn't really need to grease your tins. There is a quite specific way to sort of get your pastry into the mould. I'll show you that now. Just got a bit of excess flour here just to ensure the pastry doesn't stick to me. You want to place your pastry as centrally as possible, and you want to press from the middle outwards so that you don't get any sort of air at the bottom of your tin. And then once you've gone from the middle and you're at the edge, then you just run your thumbs around the edge of the tin and the pastry. And that will stick the pastry nicely to the base of the tin. Once you've gone round a couple of times, start to edge your thumbs up and bring the pastry up towards the tip of the tin at the same time. All the while, you're just thinning out that puff pastry. Once you get to the top, you want to just pinch the edge of that pastry whilst following around. What that does is it creates a little edge or cup at the tip of that pastry tin. Just keep going round. Try not to break the pastry, of course, and just finish off with that edging around the tin. And then when I fill the egg tarts, I'll fill it up sort of 2/3 the way up to the inside of that cup. So now I've rolled and cut your pastries, time to fill the tins. I've got a hot baking tray. The oven's at 230 degrees C already. And this is to go nice and quickly back into the oven. You don't want to overfill at all, so you're going for about 2/3 of your egg filling the way up each tin. That will expand. Just go carefully with this. Right, so there is some intricacy to making this type of egg tart at home. You've got to think traditionally, in a bakery you'll have bottom heating ovens that will heat this tray almost, which is why I've heated the tray at 230 degrees C to inject a bit of heat into the pastry. So 230 degrees now. I'm going to put the egg tart straight in, but very, very carefully so you don't spill any of that egg mix over the actual tart cases. At this point, I'm going to bring the oven down to 210 degrees C. That's going to go for about 8 minutes, 210 degrees C. I've actually got a cold tray ready, or cool room temperature tray, ready to guard the top for the last 8 to 10 minutes. And that's to get that nice sort of smooth texture and hopefully no caramelization on the top of the egg tart. So after 8 minutes at 210 degrees C, the puff pastry should have started to cook through nicely. You can see a slight caramelization on 1 or 2 of those. I'm going to pop this colder dish straight over the top to stop that from caramelizing further. Right down to 190 now, and another 8 to 10 minutes just to cook that filling through. So once your egg tarts have had their time, it's worth checking. You'll see that they dome up really nicely. That tells you that that filling is definitely cooked. In a second, that filling, or in the next couple of minutes, that filling should just start to dip back into the tarts. So your egg tarts should have a nice little dip once they've cooled a little. And the nice thing for me is when you break into it or bite into it, you can see that sort of nice smooth texture of the egg mix. Fresh out of the oven, fantastic. Nice and eggy, got that sweetness from the palm sugar and the flakiness from the puff pastry. Really tasty. Homemade egg tart. What more could you ask for? If you want more... If you want more dessert recipes, comment below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.